Benjamin, thank you so
Hey,
much for being with us, man.
thank
We
you so
really
much, Sean.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Let's delve into it. You in DC for the Fintech Summit. That's the focus of the conversation, Africa Fintech. Tell me your thoughts on that.
it's a growing industry. It's huge. I think payments across the continent is 1% built. I think there's so much more to be coming, especially in the fintech space. Majority of the funding that goes to Africa for the $5 billion that was invested last year was fintech, and I think that's just the beginning phase of what's going to happen. And the reason and rationale for why is most people don't start a business thinking they're going to be a fintech company. Like, let's say they want to do healthcare payments, but like the payments element of just healthcare, like let's say they're trying to enable hospitals to collect money for and it's disaster because they can't do direct payments with a telecom or a bank in that country. Then they end up becoming a fintech company, solving that, then end up offering that as a service to other healthcare companies that are trying to do so. I think there's so much more to be built across the continent, and that's what's really exciting. I'm really excited about the potential for the quality of companies that are going to be coming out across the continent over the next 5 to 10 years.
I am really curious. Do you think, because fintech is arguably the fastest growing sector on the continent, do you think the reason why it's growing is because it's addressing issues beyond just economy? It's addressing issues in agriculture, finance, etc., etc.
I think I'm not sure. I think with fintech, I think it covers so many sectors as you've mentioned. Um, but I think when central banks see money coming in, the movement of money, there's like more interest. Like, okay, cool. Like, how can this benefit our
How to
economy?
get more of that?
Exactly. Like, what? How do we use fintech to increase global trade with our economies? Because if you really think about it, like countries are trying to increase global trade because that's a source of revenue for them, and like increase the quality of living, increase better healthcare, as well as better education for people in the country. So I think they're all tied together, and think fintech is a foundation for that.
Now, folks from the State Department address, they spoke really highly of you. Tell us more about your business, because they spoke really, really highly of what you do.
Yeah. So at Nala, we do cross-border payments from the United States, the UK, 19 countries in Europe to 5 countries in Africa. Home market was Tanzania, which is where I'm from. I'm in Tanzania. And what we really try to focus on is how do we use technology to reduce the cost of cross-border trade and people who send money to Africa, but also trade with Africa. So we have a consumer product, which is one of our fastest growing products. We're one of the larger remittance companies from the UK to Africa. And people who are sending money to these different markets, we try to reduce the cost for trade, for FX losses through technology in different markets that we operate in. We recently got our payment service provider license in Tanzania by the Central Bank, Bank of Tanzania. And this enables us to do inbound and outbound transactions within the region.
Now, how important is it to have more of those on the continent?
I think there's going to be, 15 to 20 nalas built over the next 5 to 10 years, and I think it's a good thing. I think the more of us, the better, because at the end of the day, the customer wins. Why? Because we're all going to reduce price. We're all going to figure out and get, okay, well, like, what can we do? What else can we negotiate with banks, like ways of creative ways for partnerships and so on. I think it's a good thing, and I think at the end of the businesses and the customers win that we serve. I really think that what's being built even in our space today has barely touched the surface for what's going to happen across the continent.
Now, I am really curious in terms of Africa itself. How were you guys able to create a success story, considering the challenges that we face on the continent? We're talking low internet access, we're talking infrastructure, etc. How were you able to turn that around and still create a success story?
I think Africa's a fascinating place to work. It's my home. I love it. My family lives there. Everybody and the way I look at things on the continent is, this point of understanding, I think is hard. So for example, at sessions over here at the USA Fintech Africa Summit, people might say like, oh, African regulators are bad and this and this. And I'm like, no, guys, listen, like, go and sit down with them. Go and understand what is the problem that they're concerned about, right? And then help shape the policy. Like, that's the opportunity and the responsibility we as fintech founders have across the continent. Is like, how are we enabling the next 50 or 100 founders coming after us to be able to be successful in that ecosystem? Because the same challenges we face, we have a responsibility to the ecosystem to make it better for the next 100 people building their businesses. And so I think that is what I'm really excited about, but also it would be my call out to like other founders. It's like, don't blame the regulation, work with the regulation and come alongside. Like, we're licensed in a couple of countries, but this is because we chose to sit down and with the regulators. Some founders that we meet are like, oh, Benji, don't talk to the regulator. Why are you close to them? like actually being regulated is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It protects the country. You know, people understand like, you know, there's in payments there's so many issues that you have to be mindful of, and protect the country at the end of the day is really important. So I think how we've navigated that is taking that sort of approach of looking at it as a place to learn, but also influence what we want the policy to be in the future.
Now, as we wrap up here, Benjamin, what are you hoping would happen after the summit? I mean, we're seeing a lot of young entrepreneurs from the continent, global institutions, U.S. officials, all here networking for the very good of the continent. What are you hoping will happen as soon as this day ends?
What am I hoping will happen as soon as this day ends? Everybody who's at this everybody who's at this conference today has an interest in the African continent, and therefore the responsibility is on all of us to figure out how to enable trade, how to enable businesses succeeding and thriving, whether it's in the technology industry. Today's focus on African fintech. What can we do to enable that directly? That is our responsibility. And there's a saying I always tell my team at the office. I say, look, if you don't take responsibility, you take orders. And that's the principle of life. And so for all of us here who are here today, if we don't take responsibility of what we want to see across the African continent, we're going to take orders. And it's not going to be fun.
Well, Benjamin, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you, man.
Thank you.